Welcome into the latest edition of ESPN FC. I'm Dan Thomas, joined by Craig Burley. It's already been a busy summer for Liverpool, but it could get even busier as they're in search of a striker, according to reports, and it's Newcastle's. Number 9 thereafter, Isak is the target. According to reports, £120 million. Suggestions are if they can't get Isak, then they'll turn their attention to Isak, who of course reported yesterday Newcastle were interested in. Meanwhile, of course, they're going to bring players in. They have to get rid of some as well. Luis Diaz, the target for Bayern Munich. Reports suggesting Liverpool have rejected an almost £60 million bid for him. Lots to discuss then as we welcome in Frank Labus with us as is, and Nader Manua. Beth Lindop joins us for our very first time on the show for our Merseyside correspondent. Beth, this has come out of nowhere, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been quite the day from a Liverpool perspective. Started off this morning with reports about Luis Diaz. Obviously, there's been a little bit of speculation about his future for a little while, and it seems like he's perhaps not going to be offered the contract that he wants at Liverpool. He's got 2 years left on his current deal, so it'll be interesting to see how that situation develops with Bayern Munich. But obviously, yeah, the big story of the day is Alexander Isak, a player that we know that Liverpool have really admired for a while. Arne Slot is a big fan of him, but it always felt like this summer it was going to be too difficult a deal to do. Newcastle have been pretty unequivocal in the stance that they're not letting him go this summer. But then you add Hugo Ekitike into the mix and the possible deal for him going to Newcastle. He's someone that Liverpool have also been keeping tabs on. So between those two players and those two clubs, it looks like we could be in for a little bit of a saga, I think.
If you're Isak, Craig, your head's going to be turned, isn't it, by Liverpool being interested?
Absolutely, and the fact that Newcastle got into the Champions League, scraping in there, I think they might have felt that would have been enough. But if Liverpool come calling, the current English champions, the favourites for the title again this year before a ball is kicked, so his head is going to be turned, and it'll come down to money, to bids, and to how much maybe Isak's camp forces the issue. Dare I say it, that I think Liverpool would have been looking to buy a striker anyway. I mean, if they don't get Diaz, they can't afford to lose. If they don't get Alexander Isak, then they can't afford to lose Diaz to Barcelona. Bearing in mind, obviously, the tragic summer that they've had, and I hate to say this, but the passing of Diogo Jota means, and such an important player for them, means they were already thinner in terms of their squad. And so they definitely have to get players in before they even think about letting anybody go. But if you're Alexander Isak and you're Liverpool, bearing in mind you've signed Florian Wirtz in the summer, number 10, who's going to make things happen. Bearing in mind you're super strong in the middle of the park. Bearing in mind you're super strong in the wide positions. If you could bring in one of the hottest strikers in European football, then that's another big statement, and on top of the ones that you've already made earlier this summer already.
Nader, Newcastle fans will be hoping, right, OK, a bid's come in, we've said no, that's the end of the story. But if you're Alexander Isak, how much part do you have to play in whether or not you stay or go this summer?
I think, as we look at it today, I don't think he really has to do much, because in reality, Liverpool, if they've been rejected this first time, there'll probably be another bid that comes in and another bid that comes in. And I think maybe when the figures start to get north of that £100 million mark, if Newcastle still say no, then maybe that's the point where Isak has to make a statement himself. But for now, it's almost like he holds the cards. He's very much wanted at Newcastle and very much wanted at Liverpool. If the two clubs can agree a fee, then great. But I think if it gets towards the end of the window and maybe Newcastle have made a really strong stance, then that's when perhaps Isak will have to speak up if this is the move that he really wants. But again, as Craig was saying, they are in the Champions League, so the move itself, perhaps it's not as obvious to say it could have been in years gone by. But the fact is, when the Premier League champions do come calling, they might not call again. So maybe this is the time to say, well, for me, this is the right move and this is where I want to be.
Yeah, that's it, Frank, isn't it? Both teams, of course, in the Champions League, but as a player, surely it's the ambition of going on to win it all, and Newcastle fans don't like it, but obviously you've got a lot better chance of winning it with Liverpool than you have with Newcastle. That's got to tempt the player, isn't it?
Certainly, and when you're a player, you're ambitious, you want to win a trophy, silverware, and it's obvious that you have more chances to win with Liverpool than with Newcastle. But it's a tricky situation for Isak. I mean, he will be a betrayer for the Magpies, and maybe an opportunist. But that's football. I will completely understand Isak if he decides to go to Liverpool, and I will understand the fans will be so much disappointed by losing one of the best strikers in Europe playing the Champions League. So there is no comfortable situation for anybody, especially for Isak. I think, as Nader said, it's better if he doesn't say anything. He lets things go. If he has to play for Newcastle for another season, he will play in the Champions League. If he has a chance to go to Liverpool, he will enjoy it.
But it doesn't say much for... I think one of the other things is that Newcastle and Eddie Howe have to be super confident that if this does happen, the club have got the plan B in place. because they had a pretty good...
It would in theory be Etikike, yeah?
Well, it would, because Callum Wilson has left as well. So the backup striker...
Shut up, Nathan.
The backup... It's not Chalanoglu, you're all right. You found a new one. There's no Chalanoglu now, so we've found a new one where he can't get his teeth in. So Wilson was backing up Alexander Isak. They both potentially... Wilson's gone, Isak could go. If this happens, it's not a very good message from the Saudi ownership to the Newcastle fans, is it? In terms of what they're trying to build, where they're trying to go. If you're selling your best players at the height of their career to one of the big rivals in the Premier League, it's not really a great signal to your fan base, is it? Unless they bring in somebody better. Better.
And Ekitike is not better than Isak. Obviously, you take a look at these numbers, but you compare Bundesliga obviously to the Premier League.
I think that's the sort of juxtaposition that Newcastle, and particularly Eddie Howe's in, that you're trying to build a squad and you build a lot of it around, of course, your team work ethic, but superstars like Alexander Isak, and you sell them to one of the other teams in the top 4 or 5 that are in the Champions League. Again, sometimes it's politics and it's tough to keep people. It might be this PSR that Newcastle might be struggling to crunch the numbers, and they may have to sell them, but it isn't a great signal to your fan base.
PSR, Beth. We love that on this show, by the way. Where have Liverpool got this money from?
Yeah, well, PSR hasn't really been a concern for Liverpool for the past couple of seasons, and the reason that they've been able to spend what they've already spent this summer and why they still have some wiggle room is because they have been pretty shrewd rather in terms of the finances over the past few years. Last summer they only bought Federico Chiesa for 12 million. They didn't buy anyone in January. So while other clubs, the likes of Manchester City, Arsenal, over the past couple of seasons have spent pretty big, Liverpool have kept that spending to a minimum, and obviously they're bringing in enormous revenue. They were back in the Champions League last season, having spent a season in the Europa League. They've gone on and won the Premier League. All of the sponsorship deals and everything that comes with that, and the TV money and everything like that, it puts them in a really strong position financially. So if Liverpool aren't to sign Alexander Isak this summer, I don't think it'll be because of finances. I think the money is there if Liverpool are able to get a deal over the line. Plus, when you consider, it's likely that Darwin Núñez is probably going to be heading for the exit door. We know that Saudi Arabia have been a little bit interested. Napoli, obviously the front runners at the moment to sign him, and they've got other assets likes of Harvey Elliott, who you would imagine could command somewhere around 40 million. So they do have players that they can offload, for want of a better word, to raise a little bit of extra cash. But yeah, they're PSR compliant at the moment, and that's not really a concern for them. So I think, as I say, if this Isak deal doesn't get over the line, it won't be because of a lack of funds on Liverpool's end.
You take a look at the starting 11, say that Isak does come in, Nathan. They're pretty stacked, Liverpool.
Yeah, when you were saying some of those players before, I completely forgot how good they could potentially be, given the fact that, they have that joy of winning the league last season as well, and players who are still young and trying to prove themselves as well. Like, it's always funny to remember that Isak, he's only in his mid-20s. You look at Kirkes, he's young as well, and they've got a ton of experience in there, but so much quality at the same time. So if that ends up being the starting 11 that they have, it's great, but then also, look, they do have some depth on the bench as well. So if you're a Liverpool fan, I think they were speaking, I think the Liverpool group were talking about, this is going to be a great summer, we're going to be bringing in players and so on and so forth. Well, they've certainly done that, and if they can bring across Isak, that is one of the biggest signs I think they've probably had in their Premier League history.
Yeah, with or without Isak, Frank, it's fair to say Liverpool are favourites to win the Premier League, to retain the title. You bring them in, bring Isak in, that takes them to another level.
Yeah, it's going to be a plus. But you already take a look on the first 11 and take a look on the bench. I mean, the depth of the bench is amazing. When you see that you have Diaz, that you have Szoboszlai, Elliott, and Bradley as well. I mean, those players have already proven that they could play in any team in the world, and they're going to be sitting on the bench for Liverpool. So Liverpool is showing to the world that they're ready to get the Champions League and, of course, again, get the Premier League.
No matter who Arsenal bring in, and as good a side as they are and could be, that's the marker there, isn't it?
That's the standard.
When you've got people like Dominic Szoboszlai potentially on the bench, Curtis Jones, who was excellent last year, but Szoboszlai's the captain of Hungary. He's a terrific player. Might not get in this Liverpool side, and a lot of this goes down to the fact that the recruitment, and I know the recruitment side of it had a change again, 12 months or so with people coming in and people coming back. But the fact that Arne Slot came in last year and a lot of the people were going, right, how's he going to do? What's he going to change? What's he going to tinker with? How's he going to cope with a different league, different pressures? The fact that he, certainly in England, not so much in Europe, but certainly in England, the fact that he sailed through that with such flying colours and such a stylish, professional sort of, the way that he handled himself last year, never mind the way that his team played was first class. And I think that's just given the Liverpool ownership and the Liverpool board and all the sporting directors and whatnot the confidence to go out and say, listen, we just need to get this guy what he needs and he's going to do the job. Because what he did last year with very little changes to that Klopp side was amazing, and I think that's given them a lot of confidence to go out, spend big and really back the manager.
Let's talk a little bit more about Luis Diaz, of course. Reports that you put out suggesting that Liverpool have turned down a bid already for Bayern Munich. Obviously he's been linked to Barcelona this summer as well. Is it inevitable you feel that he will be leaving Anfield?
It's a difficult one to call, really. I personally really like Luis Diaz. I think he's a great player. He had his most productive season for Liverpool last season, and Liverpool have been pretty firm in their stance that they don't want him to go this summer. They value in him, about 100 million euros, but that's just sort of an internal for the books kind of thing. That's not because they want to sell him. And you would imagine it would be quite difficult for them to get anywhere near that fee in the market. So I think, Craig mentioned there about the change in recruitment, and I think since Michael Edwards has come back to the club in a slightly different capacity, but still sort of overseeing transfers, Liverpool have adopted an approach whereby they're quite happy for players to run down the contract, to let players go for free if Liverpool feel like they're not going to get the value for them in the market. And I think that's where they're at with Luis Diaz at the moment. He's got 2 years left on his deal. They're probably at a point now where they think we don't want to give him loads of money on a massive new contract. We'd rather him see out his contract and leave for free in 2 years' time. Now, of course, it's getting the players to agree to that, and there have been some noises from Diaz's camp that maybe he does want to move on this summer. So it will be a bit of a balancing act, I think, to try and make sure that the player is happy. But I think from Liverpool's perspective, they'd be more than happy for him to stay. I guess it just depends how much Bayern really want him and how much they're prepared to pay.
I mean, the problem is, and one of the problems you have, or can have, with re-signing new players now, the big three that we talked about last year was Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's left, Virgil van Dijk and Mo Salah. And when you
Where's your head, sorry, Craig, if you're Luis Diaz? Like, how much?
My head would be, and I agree with Beth, I think he's a very good player. Clearly a very good player, a game changer. But I think my head would be with Luis Diaz. On a Friday, am I getting the nod to be playing on a Saturday or Sunday, or am I going to be on the bench?
Right.
Is Cody Gakpo going to be playing? Is Mo Salah going to keep up this great run? Am I going to play as a false nine? Am I going to be getting regular game time and all that sort of stuff? Plus, to my initial point, Mo Salah did not sign for small wages. Virgil van Dijk did not sign for small wages. And when players see this, when players understand what some of the other superstars are on, then their agent goes in with higher demands.
Sure.
And there is a ceiling and a fence where Liverpool can only pay a certain amount to a certain amount of players. It can't give everybody the money that Van Dijk and Mo Salah is getting. It just, it just won't stack up. And so that's the difficult scenario that they're in. That these players know they'll pay big wages to the superstars, and then their agents will push the boundaries. So I think it's a bit of both. Probably a bit of money and a bit for Luis Diaz, I would imagine, getting his head turned elsewhere. And also, how much am I going to play? How much am I going to be in this Army slot side? And at the moment, we really can't answer that question because he was in and out last year.
Yeah, Frank, where's your head if you're Diaz?
I'm with Craig. I want to play because that's the most important things, but I want to be paid also the right amount. And if you are paid the right amount, if they push and say, okay, we give you that money, but you're going to be on the bench, I will be Diaz. I will go. I want to play football. I'm a game changer, as Craig said. He's a game changer. He's somebody with his pace, with his football, with his talent, with his skill, can change a game. And how many clubs would love to have him? But if you're on the bench, you cannot prove that week in, week out. So I will decide to go if I'm not sure to at least play 50 games like he played last season, because I think it would be a big loss for Liverpool. Liverpool has to make sure to keep that guy and make him happy. It's up to Slot to make him play enough in order for him to not complaining too much. That's the thing. That's the deal that Slot will have to go with many players, like Jones, like Slobodsky, like maybe Elliott, like maybe a little bit less Bradley because he's young. But to have a depth in the squad is good as long as everybody's happy, and it's hard to keep that balance.
Rodrigo's available as well, Nadem, of course. Is there an argument to say you would prefer the Real Madrid man to Luis Diaz?
I think for me, I would rather see Luis Diaz stay at Liverpool than say Rodrigo come across that way, because I think his understanding of the Premier League and the way he's adapted since he first moved over, I think it's been really, really good. I think at times his output in those early parts of the season haven't been essentially as good as some people would like, but I think from my perspective, he's settled in, he's helped them become league winners. He's been adaptable, he's played off the left, he's played in the middle, sometimes he's played on the right, and he understands what the club need and what the club want. But from the other side of things, as the guys have kind of alluded to there, something that I've heard in terms of conversation about him, and this might seem like the most out-of-touch conversation in the world, and it very much might be, but I think his salary is somewhere between £50,000 and £60,000 a week.
Right.
I think for somebody who's just won the Premier League, who's as important to the squad as say he has been for Liverpool, you probably expect it to be higher. And I know that most salaries is one of one, but this is someone that's on £400,000 a week potentially. That gap itself, from a perspective of Diaz, is probably too big. But as Craig said, will Liverpool and can Liverpool afford to pay him more? I think for some players, like no matter how good a situation you're in, you do want to feel valued. And I think if you could potentially get more money elsewhere, but still have the same status as he has at Liverpool, in terms of being someone that's mostly going to be starting, for a team that's going to be winning the league, maybe, then perhaps that's what their motive's going to be. Because at some point, ego comes into it and a sense of pride, and he will believe that he's basically outperformed that contract by a country mile. So either Liverpool give him a new deal, or he goes elsewhere and finds that money.
You're talking about Rodrigo to buy him?
Yeah, Rodrigo to buy him, obviously. That could be an
Luis
option.
Diaz to buy him?
Yeah, if you could choose between the two of them.
I think I'd have Luis Diaz.
Would you?
For probably, I think I'm probably getting a bit more consistency.
Right.
Although maybe I'm reading a bit too much into the last season that Rodrigo had at Real Madrid, because he was far from the only one that struggled. And we have seen him perform admirably there, to be honest with you. So what the hell's going to happen to him? I don't know. He certainly looks as if he's surplus to requirements under Xabi Alonso. But I think from Liverpool's perspective, if I'm Arne Slot, I'm digging away at Luis Diaz.
Yeah.
I mean,
You're just saying, look, we've got a lot of games this
listen, come on, I'm going to be using you. You're going to, all that sort of stuff a manager has to say to try and coax somebody who might be on the edge of trying to get a move, and just give me one more year. Give me another season. Next year we'll let you go with a year to go on your contract. All that sort of stuff. You're going to be a big player. You've been all this sort of bluff and bluster. It's not lies. It's not lies. He's been a big player for them. The problem is in that front line. Particularly if they sign Alexander Isak, getting some game time for some of these players is going to be quite tough. So that's where the manager comes into it, trying to coax the player to stay. At this moment in time, we just don't have the answer whether that's going to happen or not.
Beth, thank you very much for your time. I know you're very much focusing on the quarterfinals now of the Euros. The one question, though, of course, everybody asks anyone who goes to Switzerland, how much is a beer?
Incredibly expensive, yeah. I mean, I got a cocktail in my hotel the other night, and it was nearly £20. So yeah, it was very expensive, but it's beautiful out here, so I can't complain too much.
Thank you very much, Beth. Imagine how angry Stevie would be. £20 a beer.
To be fair, that is a potential way to have him go dry.
Well, yes, indeed, I think so.
We just have to move him to Switzerland.
On that note, we'll